Hi guys, it is Lauren Kramer. I am back with the second part of my experience with breast cancer while pregnant, and I left off where I just completed surgery and found out the details of the extent of my cancer. And I say extent because there was no testing, like full body testing. I did a chest x-ray and a liver ultrasound, and that's it. I didn't do any MRIs, CAT scans, PET scans. Some weren't allowed, and we just didn't do any. So I didn't know if it was in any other part of my body. At this point, I was going on to chemo. Okay. So finished surgery, found that information out, focused on healing. In the middle between getting my mastectomy, healing, and then chemotherapy, I had to get a port. Or I chose to get a port because the options were do IV, get a port, or I could do like a PICC line situation. I chose the port for ease of access. I was gonna have it for a while, but getting a port done is a procedure and you do need to go to sleep for that procedure, anesthesia. It wasn't recommended that I have more anesthesia while I was pregnant. So the option was for me, I could do it. I could have chose to do it, but they didn't recommend it. Or they told me I could do it locally with local anesthetic. And I've never gotten a port placement before, so I had no idea what to expect in terms of like how it would be with local anesthetic. And you know, I don't think I think I tolerate pain well. I think I am, you know, I don't fear things like that. So I was like, okay, I could do this. This is something I could tough out. It's worth it for my daughter. I got this. And ultimately, like, I did. I went through it fine, but I wouldn't recommend it. I do not recommend getting your port placed with local anesthetic. If you are pregnant, you know, that's up to you. That is a personal choice, and it's doable. 100% it's doable. Is it great? No. There's a lot of tugging and pulling on your chest, and you can't see it because they have to have a sterile field. So when I was laying on the table wide awake, working right here, right on my chest, right here, they had like this drape over my face. So I could really only see like here, but it was really hard. Like I just felt like I was like blind to what was happening to my body. It was such a crazy experience. And like I was talking to the doctor about jujitsu and like life, and he was good at that portion. Like we kind of kept it casual and chill, like talking about it, but ultimately it was scary. I felt heart palpitations. I heard them talk about like what was on the monitor. It just was a little bit overwhelming, and I just don't recommend it. So ultimately though, it was getting the port done was a good decision because it made things so much easier going forward. I did have a lot of neck pain. Like it was just swollen and like sore after that. So like I just had a really sore neck after. That was fine, healed up. And here we start chemotherapy. Like I said in my previous video, I started chemotherapy at 16 weeks pregnant with my daughter. I was doing ACT chemo. Adriamycin and Cytoxan was for the first 4 infusions, and that was every 3 weeks. There is an option to do dose dense, but it wasn't recommended when I was pregnant because of the course of treatment is also getting an injection to help your white blood cells to recover in between the shorter time frame, and that is not recommended during pregnancy. So I did every 3 weeks. I had Adriamycin and Cytoxan, the Red Devil, and ultimately my experience with the Red Devil was good in the sense of what I expected it to be. And from what I expected it to be, it was way different from what it actually was. And there's some anecdotal evidence that pregnant women tolerate side effects from chemo a little better. And I've heard it, you know, there's no like actual data, but from the things I've heard, it's true. And you know, my main side effect for the first 2 was like GI disturbance. I was constipated. My stomach was off, but like that was really it. But over that the first 4 of Adriamycin and Cytoxan, I got progressively fatigued. My first chemotherapy was a lot because I was pregnant and I was scared. But ultimately side effects were, I wasn't like I thought I was going to get hit, you know, and I never really got hit from side effects. And I was very thankful for that. And it made me feel like this was doable. Like I can do this. You know, I lied. I do this all the time because I forget about the hair part, that was a side effect. I did lose my hair. I started losing aggressive amounts around the 2-week mark-ish, between the 2-week mark, 3-week mark. And I ultimately shaved my head at like around the 20th, 21st day. But that, I've talked about that in a whole nother video. So, and while I was pregnant, or since during the course of AC portion of chemo, my pregnancy was going really well. I had an MFM on board. I had my regular OB appointments and I had my MFM. So there was a lot of monitoring and everything really went well pregnancy wise. Did I feel great? No, I was extremely exhausted. I had no hair. I was pregnant. You know, all the things. I had a toddler at home. But overall it was pretty tolerable. You know, I learned to deal with some side effects that I was experiencing going through, and you know, like anything else, you just keep going and you power through and you learn, you adapt, right? Although it's only 4 chemos too, I just want to mention that like that is a huge portion of your chemotherapy. Like that took ultimately 12 weeks. That was a 12-week portion of my life that in my pregnancy that I was going through the Adriamycin and Cytoxan portion, and it was exhausting and it was long, and it was like once that 4th one came, I was so thankful. I couldn't wait to start Taxol because that was an every week thing, 12 of them, and I couldn't wait to start it. Although I was scared of the new medication and the new side effects. I hated Adriamycin. Really knocked me off my feet. The fatigue was real, and while it carried over and I was still fatigued on Taxol, it leveled out and it did get a little bit better. Taxol wasn't terrible overall, but I did get a reaction with my first infusion and it was holy crap scary. I knew that was a thing. I knew a lot of people do get reactions. But I think the whole pregnancy thing just took it to another level, because when you feel like you're in a dire situation and you are pregnant, it's just like your mother instincts kick in. You just want to protect the baby. And the reaction I had was like, couldn't breathe. I felt pain in my back. I felt my heart racing. I was like, the numbness in my mouth and like the not breathing was really scary. And like, I just wanted to protect my daughter. You know, I just like, luckily, like I was right in the front and the nurses came right over, stopped the infusion, and I recovered, took Benadryl, the whole thing. They restarted the Taxol and did it slowly, and I tolerated it well ever since. Ultimately, my daughter was fine. She still continued to grow normally, well. Everything met all the milestones throughout pregnancy. I was really lucky that she was great. I will say, as I got more pregnant throughout Taxol, I was having a lot of Braxton Hicks during my infusions. And I didn't mention this to the nurses. I mentioned this to my OB and MFM, and there wasn't really any concern for this. I remember my OB just saying, like, if it gets to, I forget the numbers, but if it gets to you're having them like this many in this amount of time, contact me again. So I never had to really do that, but I was very aware of what I was feeling. And I will say that you are getting pumped with, you know, medication, you have your pre-meds, you have your IV like fluids, and you're drinking, like you have your drinks that you're bringing and your whatever. So you constantly have to go to the bathroom. And when you're pregnant, you know, you always have to go to the bathroom as well. And when your bladder is full, that agitates your uterus, and you're sitting in your chair, your infusion chair, and you know, so that could have been a huge factor as to why I was having a lot of Braxton Hicks, but nothing happened. Nothing came of that. I never had, you know, any scares in that regard. Taxol was pretty smooth as well. I was a little less fatigued. I did have some neuropathy symptoms, but not anything aggressive at all. Nothing to complain about. And I just powered through, and I I did 8. I got through 8 Taxols before my daughter came. I had a C-section with my son because of like the way my pelvic bone is and the positioning and all these things. So ultimately the decision was to have another C-section. That was a planned C-section. That was the goal. We had a time frame we wanted to stop chemo before we did the C-section. They wanted a 2-week window in order for my counts to recover, because there could be complications from going through, you know, the delivery if you haven't fully recovered and haven't fully gotten like the chemotherapy out of your system. From what I was told, that didn't happen. I ended up going into labor 1 week after I stopped Taxol for the break, and my daughter just decided she wanted to come. She was ready. I was ready. We were all ready. I was great. She was great. Delivery went well. The hospital stay went well. She was awesome. And she was born at 35 and 5 days, 35 weeks and 5 days. And I really cannot complain. I was in the hospital for like 3 days. I was very blessed in my experience of how uneventful my delivery was in the first couple days of my daughter being born was. You know, I was so nervous. I was so nervous she wouldn't be okay. And even though everything was going well on the way, you know, you have all this medication that's pumping in your body while you're pregnant, and your brain goes wild. And also, while they don't have like pregnancy categories for medications anymore, it used to be a category X, you know, chemo category X, obviously. But we did it, you know, we made it through, and my daughter was beautiful, and she is healthy and wild and amazing. And I can't believe it. You know, I don't want to cry again, but I just can't believe that, you know, I can't believe we went through that. And I remember I used to call her my self-made support buddy, and I would talk to her, and I would just like I would hype her up, I'd hype me up. Ultimately, I was talking to myself. I was just pumping myself up because we needed it, you know? I'm just so thankful that we made it that far. I'm gonna cut it off here, leave it on a good note, and we will talk about the next portion of my treatment in the next video.